Well, you're right on time for Switch Focus. For Switch Focus, your go-to bulletin for all news making headlines globally. You're with me, David Kagina, and the sign language interpreter is Michael Matthew. Remember, you can keep communicating with us using our social media platforms at Switch TV KA on Twitter, Facebook, as well as Instagram at Switch TV KA, or Kagna Kagina as my personal handle. Now, on to our first story. The representative of the Algerian Red Crescent on Wednesday said that more than 600 families have been left homeless because of wildfires near the country's capital. Nafisa Tomi said the fires have killed 65 people in Algeria and have injured more than 1,000 people. Algeria has declared 3 days of national mourning starting from today for at least 69 people who have been killed in dozens of wildfires, as Majibu Kisau opens the bulletin with a report.
Social media images have shown blazing hillsides, terrified livestock, and vast columns of smoke towering over the communities. Dozens of fires began devouring forested mountainsides in the Baba region of Kabel, east of Algiers, the capital, on Monday, destroying village homes, olive tree orchards, and animals that provide a livelihood for the region. The worst hit area has been Tizi Ouzou, the largest district of the mountainous Kabel region, where houses have been burnt and residents fled to shelter in hotels, hostels, and university accommodation in nearby towns. More than 100 fires have been reported across 17 Algerian provinces. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune paid tribute to the soldiers who were killed in different areas, some while trying to extinguish the flames and others after they were cut off by the spreading fire. The Defense Ministry has said more soldiers have been badly injured with burns. A heat wave and strong winds have fanned the fires, but the authorities say arsonists are to blame for much of the devastation. Arrests have been made, but no evidence against the accused has been presented. So far, it's not clear what their motivation might have been. Meanwhile, the Algerian people, in cooperation with the Algerian Red Crescent and several charity organizations, launched a solidarity campaign across the country to collect daily necessities for those affected by the fires. The aids included medical equipment, drugs, food, clothes, and drinking water. Majibu Kisau for Switch TV.
Now, Chad marks 61 years of independence with a large military parade in N'Djamena in the presence of Mahamat Idriss Déby Itno, president of the Transitional Military Council. Since the death of his father Idriss Déby Itno in April, the Chadian army, considered as one of the leading armies in the region, demonstrated its strength by deploying a number of artillery, as Miriam Jahid reports.
The heavy artillery composed of tanks, armored vehicles, long-range guns and other combat vehicles were displayed during this military parade. The army also flew some 20 aircraft, including Russian-made helicopters and attack aircraft. Dressed as a four-star general, Mahamat Idriss Déby was in the front row of the main gallery, surrounded by the 14 generals. In the southwestern Lake Chad region, the army has been fighting the Nigerian group Boko Haram, or its splinter branch, the Islamic State in West Africa, since 2015. At least 26 soldiers were killed last week in the largest attack since the death of Masha Déby. Chad also participates in the anti-jihadist force of the regional organization G5 Sahel, also including Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. Finally, in the Tibesti Massif North and on the border with Libya, the army is fighting rebels and gold miners. On the announcement of President Déby's death, his son assumed the titles of President of the Republic and Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces. He promised free and democratic elections at the end of an 18-month renewable transition period, but did not rule out an extension of the transition. Mariam Jahid, Switch TV.
Nigeria will lift its ban on Twitter soon after negotiations for an agreement to end its differences with the social media giant. The government has announced that the June ban came after Twitter deleted a remark from President Muhammadu Buhari and provoked an international outcry over freedom of expression. The social media giant has said it was deeply concerned about the block and also called for free and open internet access, a basic right. The block shocked Nigeria's hyper-connected youth in a country where 40 million people have a Twitter account, or around 20% of the population, according to Noi Polls, a local research organization. Twitter played a key role in political discourse in Nigeria with the hashtags Bring Back Girls after Boko Haram kidnapped nearly 300 schoolgirls in 2014, and the hashtag EndSARS during the anti-police brutality protests last year. Nigeria had said the ban would end when Twitter submits to local licensing, registration and conditions for working in the country. Libya has launched its largest COVID-19 vaccination center in the capital, Tripoli, in an effort to speed up inoculations and catch up with the rising number of cases. Established in the gymnasium of the city sports venue in Tripoli, the vaccination center is open to everyone without an appointment and can receive between 2,000 to 3,000 people in a day. According to Reward Behelile, doctor and manager of the center, the country's health infrastructure has been dilapidated by a decade-long conflict. It has officially recorded 274,453 cases of infection, including 3,811 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. The health authorities say that they have vaccinated 788,116 people so far in a nation just over 7 million and facing a third wave of COVID-19. Afghanistan has replaced its army chief as Taliban militants continue to make rapid advances. Insurgents have taken control of over 10 countries' 34 provincial capitals. Today, the Taliban say they had taken the strategically important Ghazi city, which is on the road to the national capital, Kabul. President Ashraf Ghani earlier flew to the northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif, traditionally an anti-Taliban bastion, to try to rally pro-government forces, as Namukana Samuel reports.
The removal of the country's army chief, General Wali Mohammed Amzahi, was confirmed yesterday. He had only been in the post since June. His successor will have to deal with the escalating violence across the country as the Taliban continue their offensive. US and other foreign troops have all but withdrawn following 20 years of military operations. More than 1,000 civilians have been killed in Afghanistan in the past month, according to the United Nations. President Ghani held crisis talks in Mazar-e-Sharif with ethnic Uzbek warlord Abdul Rashid Dostum and prominent ethnic Tajik leader Atta Mohammed Noor about defending the city. Mazar-e-Sharif lies close to the borders with Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, and its loss will mark the complete collapse of the government's control over the north of Afghanistan. The Taliban armed group has taken control of Ghazani, the capital of Ghazni province, about 130 kilometers southwest of capital Kabul. It becomes the 10th provincial capital to follow within days. Fighting is raging in Lakshgar, one of the Afghanistan's largest cities in Taliban heartland of Helmand province. All local government officials, including the provincial governor, have been evacuated towards Kabul. In Kunduz, another northern provincial capital, hundreds of government soldiers who had earlier retreated to the airport after the Taliban overran the city have now surrendered. The International Committee of the Red Cross ICRC humanitarian group has said that intense street-by-street fighting was taking place in Afghanistan's second-largest city of Hagda. The Taliban claimed to have taken over the city's prison, though this has not yet been confirmed. In the city of Lashkargah, in Helmand province, ICRC Director General Rohabet Madini said hospitals were struggling to deal with the dead bodies. In addition to fighting on the ground, US and Afghan planes have been carrying out airstrikes against Taliban positions in the country. Meanwhile, Denmark has agreed to evacuate current and former employees of the Danish embassy or Danish armed forces in Afghanistan due to the worsening security situation. Namkana Samuel, Switch TV.
An international meeting on the peace process in Afghanistan has started in Doha, Qatar, with delegates from China, the United States, Russia and Pakistan attending the meeting. Delegates from the four countries appealed for a peaceful solution to end the violence. The three-day talks will allow attendees to hold talks with representatives of the Afghan government and the Taliban. The security situation in Afghanistan has deteriorated, with Taliban militants continuing its fight against the government forces and gaining ground since the withdrawal of US troops from May 1st. In Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, thousands of displaced families arrived from the northern region, living in open grounds and public parks. Since the start of the year, nearly 360,000 people have been forcibly displaced by the conflict, and about 5 million people have been displaced since 2012, according to figures provided by the UN Office for the Coordination of Human Rights Affairs in Afghanistan.
We value the tradition of friendship between China and Afghanistan. We are ready to promote the process of peace, stability and security in Afghanistan. We are also willing to participate in the peaceful reconstruction of Afghanistan in the future. China is ready to make a contribution with the international community, especially with the neighboring countries and region. During the process, China will firmly respect Afghanistan's sovereign territorial integrity and its right to independently handle its own national affairs.
An MIA helicopter with 16 people on board crashed in near a lake on south of Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia's far east region of Kamchatka earlier today. 13 tourists, including a child, and 3 crew were on board when the Mi-8 crashed, with news agencies having reported that 9 passengers had been found alive and 7 were missing. Emergency ministry rescues and divers have been sent to the area to search for those still unaccounted for. Kamchatka Peninsula is popular among the tourists for its nature. It has more than 6,000 kilometers east of Moscow and about 2,000 kilometers west of Alaska. Russian aviation safety standards have improved in recent years, but accidents, especially involving aging planes and helicopters, are not uncommon. Last month, all 28 people on board of Antonov AN-26 twin-engine turboprop died in a crash in Kamchatka. And with that story right there, we head for a short commercial break. Remember, we have more in line for you, so don't switch, keep it switched. Welcome back. In case you're joining us, this is Switch Focus with me, David Kagina, and the sign language interpreter is Michael Maithia. Now, moving on, residents in wildfire-swept areas of Greek capital Athens are grappling with cleaning up widely scattered debris and ruins of damaged houses and properties caused by the disaster, while blaming the authorities for sluggish emergency and relief response. In Valrimpompi, a town in northern Athens, some residents have returned only a few days after devastating fires engulfed the area. One of them is Vasalis Katsos, who has tried to collect whatever is left from his two houses. Lillian Miner with more.
The fires circled his properties, burnt his cars, a guest house he recently built, and the entire rear of his main house. The room where his two granddaughters slept is now a pile of debris.
The
forest is very thick here. Even if fire trucks came in here, they would not do anything, and we might even have deaths. There are not fire zones to go in and control the fire, and the result here is for all of this to happen.
Earlier this month, multiple fires front broke out in Greece, burning thousands of hectares of farmland and pine forest, as well as hundreds of houses, forcing thousands to evacuate. As the fires peaked earlier this month, firefighters were called out to about 500 fire fronts across Greece in just a few days, such as Evia, the Peloponnese, Crete, Rhodes, and northern Greece, as the country experienced its worst heat wave in more than 3 decades. In Athens, emergency services were in a race against time to put out the flames, which engulfed residential areas.
What would you expect if you were in my shoes? I want politicians to answer that question to themselves. What would you expect from the authorities? There are no foundations, and they should have created fire zones near here.
The Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis said in a television speech that he and his government take full responsibility and apologize for the government's weakness on tackling the fires. The fires broke out in early August, have caused 2 deaths while injuring many others in Greece. For Switch TV, I'm Lillian Miner.
Thank you, Lillian. Now, Canada says it will appeal the conviction of Canadian businessman Michael Spavor in China, condemning the 11-year sentence for spying as the result of a sham trial. Foreign Affairs Minister Mark Gernus has cited a lack of evidence in the case against Spavor, who for years ran a travel and cultural exchange business between China and North Korea, as Namukana Samuel reports.
Spavor is one of 2 Canadians who were detained in China in December 2018 shortly after Canada arrested Meng Wanzhou, chief financial officer of the Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei, on an extradition request by the US. Spavor is a founding member of the PAC2 Cultural Exchange, an organization which facilitates international businesses and cultural ties with North Korea. Critics have accused China of treating both Spavor and Kovrig as political bargaining chips, held as part of what is known as hostage diplomacy. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau slammed the Chinese court decision in Spavor's case as absolute, unacceptable and unjust, and pledged to bring both Spavor and Kovrig back to Canada. 25 foreign diplomats came to show their support for Canada as Spavor was sentenced in Dandong, the border city where he made his home. During his trial in March, which lasted about 2 hours, diplomats were barred from entering the court. The US also condemned the arbitrary detention of the Canadian men and the 11-year sentence handed to Spavor. Namukana Samuel, Switch TV.
The Australian capital Canberra is going into a snap 1-week lockdown after recording its first case of COVID-19 in more than a year. It will come to effect from 5 p.m. local time today. The lockdown was called for whole of the Australian Capital Territory, home to around 400,000 people, because authorities do not know how the infected person caught the virus. Residents will only be able to leave home for essential reasons. Queues have already been reported at supermarkets, as Lillian Miner reports.
Australia is struggling to get on top of the highly infectious Delta strain, which has resulted in 2 of its largest cities, Sydney and Melbourne, going into strict lockdowns. Large parts of New South Wales are locked down, and in Victoria, there are similar restrictions in Melbourne for at least another week. Extra military reinforcements could be called upon to ensure compliance with lockdown rules in Sydney, New South Wales state government has said. Some 580 unarmed army personnel are already assisting the police in enforcing quarantine orders in areas of Sydney. Despite 7 weeks of lockdown in Sydney, infections remain near their highest. A total of 345 new locally acquired cases were recorded in South Wales today, while 2 men in their 90s passed away. Fewer than a quarter of Australians are vaccinated. Despite avoiding the worst of the pandemic, frustration over restrictions has led to several large anti-lockdown protests. For Switch TV, I'm Lillian Maina.
The cumulative total of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the United States has surpassed 36.16 million, with the death toll reaching 618,811, according to the Center for Systems Science and Engineering at St. Johns Hopkins University. The United States has administered 3,052,127,386 vaccine doses so far, as Brian Mwenda reports.
Has published unassembled forecast indicating the country's COVID-19 hospitalization and deaths are likely to increase over the next 4 weeks. The unassembled forecast predict that 3,300 to 12,600 new deaths, 550,000 to 2,340,000 new cases are likely to be reported by the end of September 4th. There will be 9,600 to 33,300 new confirmed COVID-19 hospitalizations likely to be reported on September 6th, according to the unassembled forecast. A total of 630,000 to 662,000 COVID-19 deaths will be reported on September 4th, said the forecast. The previous forecast, published August 4th, predicted up to 642,000 deaths by August 28th. Most hospitals across the state of Texas are saying they have run out of intensive care unit beds as new cases of COVID-19 surge faster than any other time this year due to the Delta variant. Health authorities in the capital of Austin said on Tuesday that only 2 ICU beds were left available in the entire city. As so many hospitals were severely loaded, some patients were sent home with oxygen tanks or transferred to other states with available beds. On the other hand, the vaccination rate in the state still fell below the national average, as only 53% of Texas residents have vaccinated with at least 1 dose, while only 45% are fully vaccinated as on Monday. Local time. Brian Mwenda, Switch TV.
Volunteers in Thailand are putting their own health on the line by providing assistance and supplies to patients who are unable to find hospital care, as the country's healthcare system is battling due to surging COVID-19 cases, as the number of daily cases in Thailand has been hovering around 20,000 in recent days. Authorities announced a 7-hour overnight curfew in the country's capital, Bangkok, starting from July 12th in efforts to curb surging COVID-19 cases. Due to the huge influx of the patients, most hospitals in Bangkok have run out of beds, forcing people to look out for alternate ways to get treatment at home.
Right now, I think we have over 50,000 cases a day. Most people test positive from home antigen test kits, which are not reflected in the government's daily numbers. We receive more than 200 SOS calls daily. 20% of official RT-PCR tests and 80% are from antigen test kits.
I'm so desperate, everyone is coughing heavily. We all feel helpless because we can't get help. I can't reach any of the COVID-19 call centers. We've given up on trying to find a hospital bed because my whole family is now infected, but we urgently need that medicine.
This is happening because there are no hospital beds. How are people meant to live? I don't want to see my grandpa end up like this. Please help me.
It's just the beginning. It will only get worse. We need to be prepared. We need to accept that this is the reality.
Authorities in virus-hit Yangzhou city of East China's Jiangsu province are offering pregnant women special support in their COVID-19 tests and regular prenatal checkups, despite the city's challenging situation. After the outbreak, medical experts in Yangzhou specifically stressed that pregnant women should not skip prenatal checkups due to the outbreak. There are usually 7 to 11 prenatal checkups during pregnancy. Some can be postponed during quarantines or outbreaks, but some are necessary. Pregnant women living in medium and high-risk communities can go to hospital with a negative test taken within a 48-hour period.
When going for the tests, special groups, including us pregnant women, can go through the green channel. We need to notify the community before we do the prenatal tests. During the outbreak, the community only allows one person out of each family to go outdoors every 3 days. But since I couldn't drive, I need to be accompanied by my husband. The community fully understands my situations and gives me special support.
At first, I was worried because the epidemic happened so suddenly. I should take more care of my wife, both materially and spiritually. As the husband of a pregnant woman, I hope the epidemic to end as soon as possible.
And that story right there brings us to the end of our bulletin this evening. Remember, this bulletin comes to you every day at 4 o'clock, so don't miss out. Thank you to everyone who's made this bulletin a success, from the producer Lillian Minor to the sign language interpreter who has been Michael Maithia, my director Calvin Tinga, and from me, David Kagina. Enjoy your good evening.